Today, we're shining a spotlight on two seemingly ordinary pieces of pocket change that have quietly become the darlings of seasoned collectors: the 1974 Kennedy half dollar and its counterpart from 1986. Each of these coins carries a story that goes far beyond face value, revealing twists of minting fate, elusive mint errors, and auction results that can send adrenaline coursing through any collector's veins. Whether you've held one of these in your hand or only dreamed of uncovering one in your change jar, stick around. You're about to see why these half dollars have earned a permanent place in the pantheon of must-have rarities. When President Kennedy's assassination sent shockwaves across the nation, the United States Mint rushed to memorialize him in silver. The first Kennedy half dollars rolled out in 1964, composed of 90% silver, but by 1971, rising metal costs prompted a switch to a 40% silver-clad composition for collector and proof issues only. In 1974, that silver-clad format remained, yet demand was tepid and production numbers were surprisingly low compared to earlier years. The quarter-century mark of the Kennedy design was still decades away, but the 1974 release quietly became a scant survivor in many pocket collections, setting the stage for future collector fascination. Digging into the origin story of the 1974 Kennedy half, you'll find that neither Philadelphia nor Denver produced huge runs, just over 6.7 million from Philadelphia and a similar figure from Denver. Unlike the low-mintage 1970 varieties, the 1974 issue was intended for circulation, yet very few made it into everyday transactions. A sharp decline in half-dollar use at grocery stores and slot machines meant bulk mintages were stashed in Federal Reserve vaults for years. That unintentional stockpiling limited public exposure and, decades later, making the surviving, well-preserved specimens unexpectedly scarce. Running your fingers over the rim of a 1974 Kennedy half dollar, you'll feel its reeded edge of 150 tiny grooves. The obverse bears John F. Kennedy's sculpted profile, complete with Robert Bartlett's signature, Bartlett, marking near the truncation of Kennedy's neck. On the reverse, Gilroy Roberts's heraldic eagle clutches a bundle of arrows and an olive branch, framed by the motto, E pluribus unum. Keep an eagle eye out for minor die polish lines and slight variations in strike depth. These subtleties, invisible in pocket change, are what separate a run-of-the-mill specimen from a truly collectible one. Beyond the standard design features, 1974 coins from both mints occasionally revealed distinctive die cracks radiating from the date or mint mark. Some proof examples display faint doubling on the date digits, a telltale sign of a doubling die obverse. Additionally, a handful of pieces were accidentally struck on mercury dime planchets before being corrected, placing silver-clad half-dollar designs on a smaller, thinner flan. These handfuls of off-planchet survivors, though often too worn to fetch premium prices, still trigger excitement among error hunters. On the collector market today, a typical, well-circulated 1974 Kennedy half will fetch around $5 to $7, a modest premium over face. In contrast, a brilliant uncirculated MS-63 coin often trades in the $25 to $40 range, while incoming mint-state MS-65 specimens can tip the scales at $75 or more. Proof examples, struck with care on specially polished planchets, commonly bring $50 in lower grades and climb toward $150 as they approach flawless status. Those values reflect steady demand, but it's rare to see wild swings, unless an exceptional error variety hits the block. Speaking of auctions, the record for the 1974 Kennedy half dollar in top condition belongs to an MS-67 specimen graded by PCGS, which hammered for $1,200 at a Heritage Auctions event in 2023. That coin exhibited razor-sharp details, deep cartwheel luster, and only the faintest trace of contact marks. It wasn't just the grade that sparked bidding wars, it was the coin's provenance. The seller traced it back to a forgotten bank bag discovered in an old community bank vault, untouched since the 70s. That backstory added an almost cinematic layer to the sale. Collectors often swap stories about the coin that slipped through the cracks, literally. One North Carolina hobbyist recounted finding a greasy roll of half dollars at a garage sale only to discover a solitary MS-65 1974 specimen tucked inside. The seller, unaware of its significance, had priced the roll at $2. That lone coin now sits in a protective slab, serving as a reminder that even common rolls can hide treasures if you know what to look for. Another tale involves the design's unwitting cameo in a 1970s-era film prop. A screen still from a forgotten detective flick shows the protagonist tossing a 1974 half-dollar into a beggar's cup. Decades later, fans of the movie speculated that the prop department used genuine silver-clad pieces rather than the later copper-nickel-clad 40% silver issues. Those test pieces, if they exist, could represent one-off curiosities, though none have surfaced in the mainstream market. When it comes to condition, the difference between a beaten-up MS-60 and a pristine MS-66 can be startling. In circulated grades, MS-60 to MS-62, nicks, bag marks, and loss of luster limit value to a slight premium. From MS-63 through MS-64, coins start showing original mint frost and minimal handling marks, pushing prices from $25 to $40. Achieve an MS-65 grade, and you're in collector territory. Crisp strikes, full cartwheel shine, and only a handful of minor contact marks. Beyond that, MS-66 through MS-67 demand serious premiums, sometimes 10 times the cost of a lower mint state example. Proof coins follow a similar progression, but even a PF65 can look spectacular under magnification, with mirrored fields and satiny devices offering collectors a visually arresting contrast. Spot a PF67 or higher, and you'll be gawking at nearly flawless surfaces, an accomplishment of die preparation, planchet quality, and flawless striking. Those gems command anywhere from 5 to 10 times the price of a mid-grade proof, depending on eye appeal and the absence of hairlines. All these details set the stage for the next half-dollar hero of our story, the 1986 Kennedy release, which brings its own array of oddities and price surprises. Hang tight as we move from the mid-1970s experiments in minting to the late 1980s curiosities that have collectors buzzing, and uncover why the 1986 issue might just top its predecessor in sheer intrigue. Sliding into view nearly a dozen years after our first star, the 1986 Kennedy half-dollar arrives at a moment when collector interest in modern commemoratives was heating up, and the mint was experimenting with finishes and packaging in ways that would leave us with some unexpectedly scarce survivors. On the surface, the 1986 issue looks familiar. President Kennedy's dignified profile on the obverse, the heraldic eagle on the reverse, clad in the same copper-nickel composition that served circulation since 1971. But subtle shifts in mint strategy and a handful of curious errors elevate this issue from everyday pocket change to sought-after rarity. The mid-1980s were a turning point for U.S. coinage. A surge of interest in proof sets, silver issues, and commemoratives had collectors opening their wallets and their curiosity to new products. In 1986, the mint produced both circulation strikes and special collector editions, a standard business strike from Philadelphia, no mint mark, and Denver, D. Plus a proof strike from Philadelphia and a limited-run silver proof, clad in 90% silver, sold only in U.S. mint sets. Total production for the business strikes ran into the tens of millions, over 20 million from Philly and roughly 15 million from Denver. Yet the silver proofs numbered just 418,762, and the standard proofs came in at only 2.3 million. Compared to earlier proof runs, that silver proof mintage was remarkably low, planting the seeds for future premium prices. A quick glance at the obverse reveals the familiar Kennedy portrait, but look closer at the fields around the date and mint mark. In the proof and silver proof issues, those fields are deeply mirrored, so much so that the devices seem to float above a glassy background. The business strikes, by contrast, display satin-like fields with softly frosted devices. It's this contrast and finish that helps you immediately distinguish a proof from a business strike, and it's also where some of the most dramatic die polishing lines and cameo contrasts show up. Collectors prize the deep cameo proofs, examples where the frost on Kennedy's bust gleams bright white against a pitch-black mirror. Spot a PF68 Ultra Cameo, and you're looking at perhaps the rarest regular issue half-dollar of the decade. But finishes are just the start. Among the 1986 business strikes, a handful of coins emerged with a filled die error at the mint mark. In these pieces, grease or debris partially filled the D or the blank space at Philadelphia, resulting in a softly struck, blob-like mint mark or an almost absent mint mark. These ghost mint mark errors slipped through quality control. Only a few hundred are believed to exist, and they trade at healthy multiples of the standard MS-63 price. Even more elusive are the off-center strikes, where the planchet shifted before striking, leaving up to 25% of the design missing on one side. Collectors chasing these oddities often pay $200 to $500 depending on the degree of shift and the eye appeal of the strike. Turning to market values, a well-worn 1986 half in average circulated condition will rarely fetch more than face value plus $1 or $2. But in mint state, prices climb steadily. MS-63 coins generally trade for $8 to $12, while MS-65 examples can bring $25 to $35. It's in the proof arena where the real excitement lives. A standard PF65 might change hands for $15, but deep mirror PF67 Ultra cameos routinely command $150 to $250. The 90% silver proofs top the chart. PF65 specimens often start around $50, but PF68 Ultra cameos have sold for as much as $1,000 when the mirrors are flawless and the contrast is jaw-dropping. Auction records underscore the fervor. In late 2023, Heritage Auctions offered a 1986 silver-proof Kennedy half-graded PF68 Ultra Cameo by NGC, complete with blazing contrast and no visible hairlines. Bidding opened at $400, then leapt to a final hammer price of $1,150. Proof, if you'll pardon the pun, of how scarcity and eye appeal combine to electrify the market. At the same sale, a business strike MS-67 Plus Ghost Mint Mark Denver example achieved $625, despite light bag marks, testament to collectors' hunger for any anomaly that whispers one of a kind. Behind these numbers lie stories that seasoned collectors love to share. One dealer recalls a hoard of silver-proof sets purchased in the late 1990s for just face plus a small premium, only to discover, years later, that many of those sets contained the lowest mintage silver-proof half. A single set opened on the dealer's table netted more than the purchase price of the entire lot. Another hobbyist tells of scouring coin show dealer trays in the early 2000s, spotting a lone business strike 1986 with a faint, nearly invisible mint mark. Turns out it was one of the Philadelphia blank errors, more scarce than the Denver ghost marks, and it traded hands for over $700 within days. Even the packaging adds intrigue. The Mint's original blue velvet-lined box for the silver-proof set became brittle and prone to cracking, so many survivors lack their original presentation. A truly complete set, silver-proof half, certificate of authenticity, original box in pristine shape, can command a premium of 20 to 30% over the coin alone. For collectors who prize full provenance, the hunt extends beyond the coin to the sleeve, the paperwork, even the shipping envelope postmark. Condition again proves king. In business strikes, MS-66 remains exceptionally rare. Most MS-65 coins show light bag marks or minor abrasions. An MS-66 from Philadelphia might trade for $150, while a Denver MS-66 could push $200, numbers that dwarf the $30-ish price of an MS-65. On the proof side, each grade above PF66 multiplies value. PF67 Ultra cameos at $250, PF68 examples north of $1,000, and the very occasional PF69 slipping into the $2,000 plus stratosphere. Those near-perfect proofs are the unicorns of the series, so rare that many collectors chase them for years without success. Amid these market machinations, a handful of anecdotes stand out. In one memorable episode, a Florida collector discovered a mismatched proof half in a regular proof set, a 90% silver coin dressed in a standard proof holder. That freakish misplacement on the packaging end made it a one-off curiosity, fetching $2,200 when it crossed the auction block in March 2024. In another case, A Canadian visitor to a U.S. coin show mistakenly bought a roll of Denver Mint business strikes, thinking they were common. When she got home and cracked the roll, she found two off-center strikes, enough to turn a $10 roll into a small fortune. Between mintages, finishes, error types, and packaging, the 1986 Kennedy half dollar stands as a microcosm of modern collecting thrills. It reminds us that even when millions of coins leave the mint, the slightest variation, whether in planchet, die, or handling, can transform an everyday piece into a prize. For collectors in our 40s, 50s, and beyond, these coins aren't just metal and design. They're time capsules of minting experiments, market moods, and the serendipity that makes numismatics endlessly magnetic. As we wrap up our journey through the mid-70s and mid-80s, take a moment to consider which story resonates more: the overlooked silver-clad survivors of 1974 or the finish-obsessed, error-laden treasures of 1986? Both coins teach us that rarity isn't just about mintage numbers. It's about the quirks, the mistakes, and the human decisions that leave their mark in metal. In the next video, we'll compare these two half-dollar heavyweights head-to-head, examining which offers the best mix of scarcity, eye appeal, and investment potential. Until then, keep your eyes peeled, your gloves ready, and your sense of wonder alive, because the next great find might be spinning in your pocket right now.